evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. In case you haven't noticed, it's hard to trust anything you hear right now. We've heard you. We're grateful that you trust us, and we will try to be worthy of your trust. We want to begin tonight by assessing some of the things no doubt you have heard about last week's presidential election. There are conflicting versions of virtually every part of that story. But as of right now, here's what we think we know. For much of election night, Donald Trump seemed to be leading in a number of key swing states. Then early Wednesday morning, he began to fall behind. That trend continued more or less for several days. On Saturday, the media declared Joe Biden the president-elect. Biden quickly accepted that judgment. The Biden campaign now has something called the Office of the President-elect. It sounds official, which of course is the point of setting it up. And in the end, it's possible it will be official. If, after all the questions have been answered, it becomes clear that Joe Biden is the legitimate winner of the presidential election, we will accept that, and we'll encourage others to accept it too. We're Americans first. We want what is best for this country. We want our system of government to continue. Whether it does continue, though, depends in part on how we proceed from here. As of tonight, tens of millions of Americans suspect this election was stolen from them. That means we now live in a country where a large percentage of our population no longer believes that our democracy is real. That is sad. It is also dangerous. It could easily get worse. What we're doing in response is hardly the solution. It is making our country much more volatile. It is setting us up for something bad. In a democracy, you cannot ignore honest questions from citizens. You're not allowed. You can't dismiss them out of hand as crazy or immoral for asking. You can't just cut away from coverage you don't like. You can't simply tell people to accept an outcome, because force doesn't work in a democracy. That's dictatorship. In a free society, you have to convince the public of your legitimacy. You have to win them over with reason. Democracy is always a voluntary arrangement. Telling voters to shut up is never enough. So in this case, tonight, there's only one way to lower the national temperature and unite the country. We need to find out exactly what happened in this election. And there are questions, and that means we have to answer them. For example, in Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Michigan, the Trump campaign has now collected signed affidavits that attest to criminal activity during the voting process. In the city of Detroit, witnesses have alleged under oath that ballots were improperly backdated and counted without matching signatures. One poll watcher alleges that 40,000 late unsealed absentee ballots were counted orally, and all of them went for Democrats. In the state of Nevada, 8 whistleblowers from within the Nevada Election Department say they witnessed voter fraud abetted by other election officials and by their supervisors. According to one affidavit, a poll worker saw people bringing handfuls of ballots to a Biden-Harris campaign van. Those ballots were then filled out at the van, placed in return envelopes. Eventually, Biden supporters formed a wall to block outsiders from seeing what they were doing. Meanwhile, according to voting records, people who were not even alive still somehow managed to vote on Tuesday. In New York, deceased voters cast absentee ballots. On October 9th in Nevada, a man called Fred Stokes Jr. mailed in his vote. The only problem was Fred Stokes Jr. died 3 years ago at the age of 92. The Republican Party of Nevada says it is aware of hundreds of other potential cases of dead people casting ballots. In Pennsylvania, records show turnout from several people who were born in the 19th century. They apparently rose from their graves to vote. Now, all of that is real. We spent all weekend checking it. False claims of fraud can be every bit as destructive as the fraud itself, so we need to be careful and responsible, all of us. But what we just told you is true, and there's more of it. Just hours ago in the state of Georgia, an election official admitted that they will find illegal votes and double voters when they check the voter rolls.
Let me be perfectly clear on another point. We are going to find that people did illegally vote. That's going to happen. There are going to be double voters. There are going to be people who did not have the qualifications of a registered voter to vote in this state. That will be found. Is it 10,353? Unlikely. But every election, as I've said, I think every day at this podium, is imperfect.
We are going to find that people did illegally vote. That's going to happen. That is the official account, before even counting the votes, from a key swing state in the middle of a contested election. And of course, you can believe it because we've already found illegal voting. So much for those claims that voter fraud never happens. Of course it happens. They knew it happened when they told us it would never happen because they're liars. So we know that for sure. At this stage, the fraud that we can confirm does not seem to be enough to alter the election results. We should be honest and tell you that. Of course, that could change. But changing the election results is not the whole point. The real point is that fraud took place, and that should horrify us. If you want people to believe that our system is real, that our system is worth, say, joining the military and dying to protect, then you've got to get to the bottom of what just happened, and you've got to do it as quickly and responsibly as you can. You can't have fraud in an election because no one will believe in elections, and then things fall apart. But gathering facts is the last thing our media, our designated fact gatherers, seem to want to do. Instead, they're demanding that you shut up and accept Joe Biden. Period. That's their verdict. You must accept it. And if you don't accept it, they'll hurt you. In other words, no one in this country is going to set up a, quote, resistance to Joe Biden. They're going to make certain of that. Those resist stickers you remember? No, those are for Range Rovers only. No pickup trucks allowed. Try it, buddy, and you'll find out. Overstatement? Well, this morning, a prominent anchor on CNN sent this tweet to Trump supporters. Quote, I truly sympathize with those dealing with losing. But at a certain point, one has to think not only about what's best for the nation, peaceful transfer of power, but how any future employers might see your character defined during adversity. Got that? Your character is on trial here. Future employers, take note. In other words, accept Joe Biden now or you will never work again. Do what CNN tells you to do or good luck feeding your family. Did the Sicilian mafia ever make threats that explicit? No, they didn't because they knew the FBI was listening. But in this case, the FBI is on board. And so, of course, is the entire media establishment. After Joe Biden claimed victory on Saturday, CNN released an ad commanding its viewers to accept Joe Biden as their lawful president and holy savior. If you don't let Joe Biden into your heart, there cannot be peace. Watch.
Our trust has been broken in our leaders, in our institutions, even with some of our friends. And we are hurting. Now more than ever, we need each other to listen, to learn from one another, to rebuild those bonds.
It's over. Now's the time to come together. Now's the time for healing, or else. So what exactly is this healing that they're looking forward to, that they're commanding you to participate in? Well, Michelle Obama's thought a lot about healing. In her message of unity, Michelle Obama wrote this, quote, let's remember that tens of millions of people voted for the status quo, even when it meant supporting lies, hate, chaos, and division, end quote. That's the unity message. Let's remember who disobeyed. Let's hurt them. Let's remember the people who voted for our political opponents. Sandy Cortez of Westchester didn't need to be reminded because she hadn't forgotten. Cortez asked this, quote, is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future? In the future? Is George Orwell writing her scripts? No, she's writing them herself. And the answer, of course, to that question, the question, is anyone keeping track of the Trump supporters who must be punished into perpetuity? The answer is yes. Someone is keeping track. In fact, many people. Harry Savugin, the former national press secretary for the Democratic National Committee and former Pete Buttigieg staffer, was already hard at work on an online enemies list. He wrote this, quote, White House staff are starting to look for jobs. Employers considering them should know there are consequences for hiring anyone who helps Trump attack American values, end quote. Oh, American values, says the guy who's going full Soviet. Totally impervious to irony, these people. Corporate America, of course, was on board. Needless to say, they never left. They were always on the team. The Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, Republican groups, right, along with CEOs from companies like United Airlines, Microsoft, Amazon, you name them. They already congratulated Joe Biden as the counting was still underway. And as they were doing that, the media were not hard at work verifying the integrity of the election, of the democracy they so deeply cherish. They weren't interviewing the poll workers who signed those affidavits we just told you about, which are real. Instead, here's what they're doing.
How you feeling?
I almost can't talk right now because of the emotion. Everyone is welcome under this tent. We don't care who you are. We don't care if you voted for us or not. You're all part of this American experiment. I was so overwhelmed to hear that. I don't care what people think, if they think I'm biased or not, I don't care. And so I'm very emotional. So when you ask me how I'm feeling right now, I'm sorry. That's all I can tell you. This is how I feel right now. I am so happy to have this platform to be able to do this. I may not have it after this, but I really don't care. I am so happy.
I don't care. Take it from someone who does this gig for a living. If you can't keep your emotions in check to think clearly, you are a child, go do something else. I don't care if people think I'm biased or not. There you go. And they really don't care, because they don't need to, because they won or claim they do. Like all hasty decisions, the one they're trying to force on us, we will regret it. Have you ever made a hasty decision you can live with long term? No. No, you haven't. The point isn't that we need to keep investigating until Donald Trump wins. That is not the point. The point is we need to find out what happened so that the rest of us believe the system is real. And to make that happen, Congress ought to investigate every meaningful claim of illegal voting. Every legitimate claim that is raised must be investigated. Would that become a circus? Of course. Would a congressional hearing on voter fraud descend inevitably into partisan posturing? What do you think? Yeah, it's guaranteed. But there's no choice. It's still worth it. An investigation like that, a federal investigation, would produce facts. And we need facts. Transparency is the key. Without it, there's no hope. Ever wonder why people on both sides are embracing conspiracy theories? Why do you think that's happening? And you can't just make them go away or shut down the websites. People reach for that. Why? Because they know the people telling the official story are lying, and they are lying.